We are live. Fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone. Hello, and thank you for tuning in. This is Coffee with Ben. My name is Ben Blackman. I'm the Director of Development for Ridge, which is a group of innovation consultants based in St. Petersburg, Florida. As always, before we get started, I want to encourage everybody out there to go to the Ridge YouTube page and our Facebook page to like and share all of our great content. You can also schedule your own virtual Coffee with Ben session where we can talk about how Ridge can help your company innovate more effectively. Can also be a guest on the show if you'd like. The show, as many of you know by now, focuses on how companies innovate, strategically plan for the future, and create a strong culture for their employees. I'm really excited this morning to welcome our guest, the best name we've ever had on the show, Powers Kane. Sounds like a superhero, but he's actually the co-founder and chief revenue officer of RecoupeTax, which features a team of tax business experts. They specialize in exclusively on federal and state R&D tax credits. So the time could not be better to have Powers Kane on the show to talk about tax credits that you all can get. Their focus is on helping companies, hopefully like yours out there, to reduce tax liabilities, increase cash flow. He's here to talk about it. Thanks for joining me today, Powers. How are you?
I'm doing great. Ben. Thank you for having me. I'll say that I watched the last episode and you do a great job, but the speaker, I think Chris Milan, right?
Yes.
He said that he was the first person to actually have coffee
Oh.
on Coffee with Ben. So I just decided let's keep that train
keep
rolling.
it going.
Right? So
probably good for the branding for a little bit of coffee here. What is your coffee of choice? First question.
I live in St. Petersburg and I live very close to Black Crow Coffee. So I buy the beans there that they roast and then I grind them here at home. I'm a bit of a coffee snob. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
This is the place to do it.
That's right.
Well, I always love having business owners and entrepreneurs on the show. I love hearing the stories because they're always very insightful and inspiring. I want to start by understanding a little bit how you went from a career that was mostly software and services, a lot of sales, to the point where you decided, I'm going to start my own R&D tax credit business in St. Pete. So what was that process like? When did you finally decide, all right, this is what I'm going to do? Why this particular area? And then how did you develop it?
Yeah, no, that's great question. As you indicated, most of my career has been spent in business development and sales. Selling software platforms, consulting services. And, I think the entire time there was that inkling and that seed of wanting to start my own thing. And maybe that's something that everybody can relate to, or it's sort of like writing the great American novel. Everybody sort of dreams of it, but it's, often just a pipe dream. But after many years of sort of the grind and learning through success and failure, I sort of stumbled upon, to be quite honest, this idea, and I can't credit myself as my business partner. That sort of came to me and he said, what do you know about the R&D tax credits? And I said, not a whole lot, and I think that I share that with unfortunately many business owners and executives. But the R&D tax credit is a very exciting opportunity. It's, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's perhaps the most lucrative tax incentive available to U.S. businesses. And there's this opportunity, and I think maybe you can relate that when you're in sales and business development, there's nothing more rewarding than providing a tangible benefit to a company, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of products and even service-based companies out there where they're struggling to articulate what an ROI is going to be. And, maybe if you implement this, you'll get a 15% uplift or what have you. So when I kept reading about the R&D tax credit, the return is very simple. It's cash back, and it can be substantial to companies. I mean, tens, hundreds, sometimes in some cases millions of dollars to inject back in their bottom line. So I think the timing was right for me. It was, my experience, the desire to start something new, and then the idea that kind of came together. And I decided that it was the time to take the jump and the risk, and so here I am, helping companies thrive and grow, hopefully.
Right.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I'm curious, knowing what you know now, having done it, is there any particular advice for those that might be watching or listening that might be considering a startup of their own? I'm guessing starting your own business during a pandemic maybe is not the easiest route to go, but for those that are out there, is there any advice that you would have for them?
Well, I'm certainly not an entrepreneurial maven here. So, I'll do my best to answer this question. I don't think the timing is ever right,
Yeah.
to be quite honest with you. And I think, we can talk about this later, but, if from a perspective of what we're delivering to clients, I think actually the timing is perfect, because you're really, I think companies are looking for extra cash. But to answer your question, from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think the lessons are pretty elementary, right? I think you need to have an idea that you believe in. A lot of people are motivated solely by money, which is great. Most of us do want to have some comfort in our lives, but if you're going to devote your time and efforts, you better be able to stand behind that and truly believe in what you're doing. And I know that from a very nasty experience in my past. Don't be motivated just by money. I think, the second lesson is don't be afraid to fail. Right. I'm a big believer in not being motivated by fear, but by possibility. So, if obviously, you commit everything you can to success in any endeavor that you do, but not failing is not a motivation that someone should have. Failure is okay. And then, I've been fortunate enough to have a good support system, not just professionally, but personally. So I've got a great business partner. We've hired some fantastic people that everybody shares the same vision and the same approach. Then my wonderful wife has been so supportive of what I'm doing, because there are some late nights, burning the midnight oil, trying to figure things out, and she hasn't said a peep, nothing but support. So I think those are probably the three most important things to focus on.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned this a little bit earlier, that when you were starting this, you really didn't know much about Rnd tax credits. I'll be honest, I don't know much about it, and I'm sure that's probably the case, which is why one of the key aspects of your marketing efforts is just educating businesses on what's out there. What are Rnd tax credits? How can you get them? So I'm curious, what specifically is available for businesses to take advantage of, and what obstacles are in the way to getting those tax credits?
Well, the good news, Ben, is if you don't know much about Rnd tax credits, you're not alone, because many, many, many business owners and executives also don't know much about the Rnd tax credits. So as I mentioned earlier, the Rnd tax credit is the most lucrative incentive available to U.S. business, and it is in place essentially as a reward from the government to reward innovative activities. Okay. And it's a dollar for dollar return. It's a dollar for dollar credit, not a tax deduction. So in essence, it is this influx of cash that companies can use in any way they want. There's no statutory requirement in terms of using the money. So it can be transformative for certain organizations, because they can reinvest that back into their business. And the issue here, and it sounds great, right? So it sounds really basic and really great. Here's the deal. 90%, 90, of eligible businesses miss out on taking advantage. So when I was studying this and I got to that number, I said, well, that can't be right. Well, it is indeed right. It's verified by multiple sources. And so what you have here is this massive gap, right, between those companies that are taking advantage of this incentive and all these companies that are just basically leaving money on the table. And the primary reason that is education. It's either companies don't know about the credit or they assume that they're not eligible. And that's largely due to misconceptions about what R&D actually means. So when you think R&D, right, you think of lab coats and beakers and, giant scientific breakthroughs and, teams of maybe computer science scientists or developers, and all of that is R&D. But the fact of the matter is that to the government, and as it pertains to this credit, the definition is much more expansive than that. Because, and when we talk to people, and I sit down and I say, listen, don't think R&D, think innovation. And you know very well that companies are innovating in a wide variety of ways. And in fact, innovation happens in any company, or the vast majority of companies, in both small and large ways, right? So it doesn't need to be that you're developing the next great product. It can be that you are improving your internal processes or your internal systems, right? So a great example is we talk to manufacturers and they say, well, we're not actually designing the product that we're manufacturing, so we don't do R&D. Well, I ask them, do you help to improve the manufacturing process? Do you try to make it faster, cheaper, more sustainable, greener? Are you trying to just get better at your component of the business? Well, yes, of course we are. Well, that is, in essence, according to the government, that falls under the R&D category. So basically any company that is developing new or improving upon existing products, processes, techniques, services, technologies, software, the list goes on, can be eligible for the Rnd tax credit, regardless of the size. The other thing we get is, well, we're just a small company. That's all right. That's okay. Revenue is not an eligibility standard. In fact, pre-revenue startups can take advantage of the Rnd tax credit. A one-man shop, as long as you're conducting the right activities, then you're eligible for this very lucrative incentive from the U.S. government. And it is sort of become, I've gone through this process myself, which is, hey, I had no idea what this was, to now kind of being passionate about educating people. They don't necessarily have to use our company, but this is something that that you're entitled to, that businesses are entitled to, and I've become passionate about spreading the word and ensuring that that organizations are at least exploring this, because it can be a game changer for many organizations.
So I'm curious, when you bring a client in and you're kind of taking them through the process of evaluating how they can get these credits and stuff, what does that look like? What is the process that you use from start to finish? And then is there anything that really differentiates RecoupeTax from other firms that are doing similar things?
Yeah, the process is fairly basic, right? The actual study itself, okay? And so what our firm does is we do R&D tax credit studies. So there is a requirement to substantiate the claim given to the IRS, right? And that is a very detailed and complex process. Now, the good news is that firms like us exist to alleviate that burden from any internal resources that might attempt to do this, right? So essentially what we do is we engage a client, we determine their eligibility pretty quickly. I mean, I can tell you if you're potentially eligible for the R&D tax credit, honestly, 60 seconds, just by answering a couple of basic questions. And then we would need to actually calculate the credit. which does require access to some financial information. But once we calculate the credit, they will know with pretty much 95, 98% certainty what they're going to get back from the business or from the government. We can also determine their eligibility for the flexible component of the credit, which is really exciting. It can be potentially retroactive up to 3 years. We've got a lot of happy clients when they first claim the credit. They're going back 3 years, including the current tax year. So they're getting this massive influx of cash. The credit can also be carried forward up to 20 years. So especially for smaller organizations like pre-revenue startups, we see this a lot. They can carry that forward to offset future liabilities, which helps them with valuation, helps them attract additional investment. So it's a really powerful component. So what we'll do is that analysis up front. And then if folks want to dive into the actual study process, that's where our team comes in. And as I said, it's a detailed and complex process that combines both, accounting, technical, and business considerations. So, another misconception most people have, especially those that have heard of the credit, is they think, hey, this is just, my CPA can do this. It's just an accounting function. And while there is an accounting component to it, it's not just limited to that, because you have to create there's an element of subjectivity, and you have to create a narrative that ties back all of your activities to the standards, the qualifying standards set by the IRS. So there needs to be an understanding of the technical elements in play, as well as what the impact is to the business in order to create that substantiating documentation. If it was just accounting, well, somebody would have developed the software years ago to just spit this thing out. So we have been fortunate to put together a team of very experienced R&D tax specialists that are nationwide. These are folks that have done, I think at last count, over 650 different studies over the course of their career. And what we wanted when we hired them is really folks that were able to kind of think a little bit differently, not just plug and play and do the same process over again. Because to your point, we wanted to differentiate. We wanted to ensure that, can we do this more efficiently? Can we do it faster, and yet not lose any of the accuracy or detail that's required to hold up to any potential scrutiny in the future? And so essentially what we do is we combine a methodology developed by these professionals, as well as a technology enabled process that enables us to perform the study work, the calculations. We do interviews internally with clients, as well as create that narrative in as little time as possible with minimal disruption to the client's actual day-to-day business. And then we'll deliver the study, and then off they go, happy when they get that check back from the federal government. So
yeah, I'm curious what type of actual impacts you've seen with the businesses that you're working for. Obviously, that influx of cash is really important, but are there other stories that you've heard from your clients on how this has really changed their trajectory?
Yeah, well, primarily it is that cash flow boost. But again, there's no statutory requirements in terms of how to use that cash flow. So we worked with both small startups as well as medium-sized firms. And in this particular age, meaning like the COVID sort of period that we're in right now, we've seen the use of that money in a lot of different ways, right? We've manufacturing clients that were able to help keep staff in place that they were potentially having to let go. That cash flow influx has helped them sort of maintain that personnel, which that also cascades down the business, enables them to continue their production capacity and not take such a big hit in terms of revenue. For smaller companies, as I mentioned before, if you have a startup that has an incredibly high burn rate, and they're just trying to get to revenue and trying to just get out there and survive. An influx of $250,000, to reinvest into the business, and whether it's to hire additional talent or just to dump it all in sales and marketing and try to get the word out there, it's transformative. So we've seen different stories. They're all positive though, because who can't use an extra couple $100,000 in cash flow? I mean, there's no negative, and so that's kind of getting back to that practical benefit is, when you're able to show that ROI and say, this is exactly what the ROI is going to be to you. You get some really happy people, and especially since they deserved it, and there's really no smoke and mirrors. It is, you did X and you deserve Y, and here's what you're going to get back. So it's pretty exciting to have those conversations.
Yeah, like you said, that's kind of what drives you is having that tangible benefit for your clients. So look forward to hearing more and more success stories as you continue on. If you're just joining us, you're watching Coffee with Ben. I'm Ben Blackman. I'm the Director of Development for Ridge. I'm joined today by Powers Kane. He is the co-founder and chief revenue officer for RecoupeTax. That features a team of tax business experts. They specialize exclusively in federal and state R&D tax credits. Since we're discussing a government program here, Powers, I think it's important to note that we just recently had an administration change. I'm curious, do you anticipate any significant changes to the R&D tax credit program or what's available in the future? Are there any pieces of legislation that you'll be keeping your eye on as we move forward that could affect your clients?
I do anticipate some positive changes as it relates to the R&D tax credit. Anybody that's been paying attention to what's going on in the economy knows that while we're in this sort of sustainability kind of period, making sure that we're not cratering, so to speak, it's pretty negative, but let's be honest. I think we're thankfully about to move out of that period and really focus on growth. And in terms of the tax incentives that are there, and there are many good ones, the R&D tax credit is without question one of the most important, because it motivates the right behaviors. It's rewarding the right behaviors. And even when the credit was initially conceived 40 years ago, believe it or not, its intention was to enhance domestic innovation and to make the US more competitive on a global scale. So there have been significant lobbying efforts over the last few months, led by the tech and manufacturing sector, to increase the R&D tax credit. So right now it's typically about 10% on the federal level of qualified spend. There's been talk about increasing that to 20%. It's a little aggressive, frankly, but even if we land at 15, that's a 50% jump. It's going to mean lots of good things for those people that are eligible, and it's going to mean a lot of good things for domestic economic growth. There's also a different conversation to be had, which is international competitiveness. The U.S. is not the only country that has R&D tax credits. In fact, I think up to 40 different countries offer similar types of credits. And unfortunately, even though we conceived of it and we were the first, we rank about 25th in the world. And there's some other data in terms of innovation and where the US stacks. I think we've fallen out of the global top 10 in terms of innovation. So there's a lot of reasons for the current administration, both domestically, internationally, to kind of pump up the R&D tax credit, maybe even on a temporary basis, to try to motivate those that kind of innovative activities and kind of reward companies for taking the economic risk. And I think the thought process is the more companies are behaving in such ways, the more competitive they are. the faster the U.S. economy will grow. So I do anticipate some changes. What specific legislation? I know there's nothing in the current stimulus bill. It's going to be voted on, I believe, later today or tomorrow. But I think by the end of this year, certainly going into fiscal year 2022, so sometime in September, we'll see some conversation around that.
Gotcha. Now, we've talked a lot about kind of the federal level of this, but there are also state credits that are available. What can you tell us about what's happening here in Florida?
Yeah. So the federal level is the primary application of the Rnd Tax Credit, but there is, to your point, state level. So there are states, I believe it's 35 different states that offer similar types of Rnd tax credits. They are varying structures, and so in Florida, we do have an Rnd tax credit here. It is a defined pool of money that does require an application process, so it's not quite as lucrative as, let's say, states like California. However, unlike California, we have no state income tax, so there are other incentives in play. But there are other types of tax credits that we're talking to clients about that have a similar impact as the Rnd tax credit. So, for instance, one that we're talking to extensively over the last 6 to 8 weeks is the employee retention tax credit. So it's a refundable payroll tax credit for up to 50% of wages paid during the pandemic. So any company that faced a downturn in, let's say, a decrease in gross receipts, or was forced to fully or partially close due to the pandemic, and that's a lot of businesses, can get up to, I think, $5,000 back for each employee. So this is, again, no strings attached, right? It is, if you qualify, the government's going to cut you a check, and this is a major boost in cash flow that companies can use to rebound as 2021 and 2022 continue. So this is fairly new. But it does have, it has some dovetails with the Rnd tax credit, and it's certainly something that any business here in Florida should be looking into, especially if they were impacted in any way by the coronavirus and pandemic downturn.
Awesome. Well, we always like to wrap up here with what we call the Benny Good Times Fast Five. These are 5 quick questions just so we can get to know Powers Kane a little bit better on a personal level. We talked a lot of business. Let's talk about you. I always like to start off by asking, what is your favorite thing about the St. Pete area?
Oh, geez. Okay. All right. So other than the weather, the beaches, and general quality of life, let's see. My favorite thing about the area, this is going to sound a little cheesy, but I will say that the best is yet to come. And what I mean by that is, I think you're a transplant like me.
Yep.
Since we've been here, we've already seen tremendous growth.
Yeah.
There's so many great things about living here, but I've personally seen sort of the development or the maturity of this ecosystem that's bringing entrepreneurs, business. A lot of folks from the East Coast, West Coast are moving out here because they see what a great place it is to live. And I think from a business standpoint, we're really kind of growing into what I would kind of characterize as a major sort of economic center within the country, and so it's exciting to be here. There's so many possibilities. I do take issue. You said Tampa, St. Pete, right? So I'm a St. Pete guy.
Yeah.
I like to phrase it St. Pete, Tampa area.
There you go. Yeah.
It's also alphabetical, right? ST. So yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I like the friendly rivalry, and we'll rep St. Pete for sure on this show. So the second question, though, is if you get the opportunity to travel anywhere in the world, if I'm giving you a free ticket, where would you go?
Geez, Ben, you're not gonna give me the easy ones, like what's your favorite color?
No, that one's coming next, actually.
Where would I go? Many places that I would like to go. I'd say top of the list is Argentina. Would love to see Patagonia. I love wine, so the Mendoza wine region is one that I would love to visit. And then Buenos Aires always has this. I've always been fascinated. I just want to see the city and sort of this European style Latin city, which just sounds incredibly interesting to me. So that's where I would go.
Excellent choice. Well, 3 is I actually know the answer to this question. I believe as
It's
people
blue.
see in your background, you're a movie buff, as am I. So this is an easy question. Well, maybe not so easy, but what is your favorite movie?
Oh yeah. Like that's an easy question. Come on, if you're a movie buff, that's not an easy question. You know that. Okay, I'm going to cop out here and not answer one. I'm going to give you a couple because I am a very, very big movie buff. So if I had to go classic movies, I would say either Cool Hand Luke Behind Me or a movie called Bridge Over the River Kwai, which I think you and I have spoken about in the past. It's a great, great movie. It's a guy's movie. And then if we're doing more modern movies, I'd have to say either The Departed, which I'm a big fan of. And then if a guilty pleasure, I love Tombstone. I can't get enough of
classic.
A little Val Kilmer. I'm your Huckleberry. So I can't nail one down. So I have to
that's fair.
Kind of
we'll give you a couple categories to choose from there. Question 4. If I was hosting a talent show and I pushed you on stage and just made you do something, what are you going to do for this talent show?
Good golly, man, these are tough. These are tougher than the last ones.
Yeah.
Does drinking wine count as a talent?
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So give you a little sort of look into my personal life. I really don't have a talent, and I never learned how to play an instrument. But I have a 2.5-year-old son, and my wife is from a very musically inclined family. So I want nothing more. Well, I'd love him to be the shortstop of the New York Yankees, but I very much want him to learn an instrument. And so I figured I should learn an instrument as well. So I'm teaching myself how to play the ukulele, which I figured, hey, this is kind of a simple instrument to learn. So if pressed to join a talent show, I would likely attempt to play the ukulele in front of whatever crowd had assembled.
I would be in that crowd. I mean, I would either be amazed or it would be hilarious to watch you fail miserably. I don't know how good you are at this point, but I'm very interested in the ukulele progress. So
likely to
part 2 to this conversation, we'll bring you on and I have you perform.
Yeah, likely to see the latter, the failure, right? Yeah.
Awesome. And then question 5, final one. This should be easy too, right? Who is your hero or your biggest inspiration and why?
Wow. This is actually an easy one.
Okay, good.
So it's actually my mother, who unfortunately is no longer with us. But my mother, it's nothing more than how she treated people and how she conducted herself, and she really lived her life with grace and with positivity. And I don't know about you, but we live in like a super cynical age. Very sarcasm sort of predominates, and sometimes people get a little nasty. And frankly, I'm it's not that I'm any better than any normal person that lives in this age. So I always try to think back to my mother. She was incredibly gracious and friendly with basically everyone that she interacted with. And even though I fail quite often, I try to emulate that in what I do. And so she's truly my hero.
That's awesome. I'm sure she would be very proud of you and what you're doing with RecoupeTax, which is actually the last question, which is for everyone who's out there that's been listening and watching and want to know more about RecoupeTax and all the great work that you're doing. Where can they go to contact you to find out more?
Absolutely. Yeah. They can go to our website, which is RecoupeTax.com, and that's Recoupe tax.
Mhm.
.com. There's plenty of great information there in terms of the R&D tax credit and some other tax credits that are available that will not make your eyes glaze over. You'll be able to easily process and comprehend what it is the R&D tax credit is. Certainly hop on there and give us a call. We'd be more than happy to conduct a very brief assessment and let you know what your options are.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Powers. I'd like to encourage everybody else who's out there to check out the brand new Ridge website at www.ridg.com. It's ridge.com. And don't forget, you can go to our YouTube channel, check out all the great content, other Coffee with Ben videos, and stay tuned for more. We will see you next week. Thanks again, Powers. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great day.